Hey friends, welcome to tonight's video, and tonight I have what I consider to be a real case of poltergeist activity. So if you remember, maybe a couple weeks to a couple months ago, I did a video on poltergeist activity and the difference between poltergeist activity and ghost spirit activity. Basically, the short version of it is poltergeist activity is usually caused by living humans, and spirit ghost activity is usually caused by people that have passed away. If you want to watch that entire video, I'll put a little card up above me somewhere. But anyway, today I have what I think is a true case of poltergeist activity, and once I get into it, you'll see why I think it's poltergeist activity and not ghosts. So this activity happened in 1921 in a little town called Guyra. I think that's how you pronounce it, but it's in Australia. The Bowen family lived in that town, and sometime in April, they started experiencing this weird activity in their home. They started to hear what sounded like thumps and banging on the walls, and then they would hear what sounded like a shower of rocks and stones being thrown on their roof and against their walls. Sometimes the rocks were thrown at such force that they would actually break the windows of the home. So at first the family thought that somebody was behind this activity, thinking that maybe some type of prowler was outside their house in the middle of the night throwing these rocks and stones at them. So they contacted the local authorities, and the authorities came out and they ended up doing surveillance of the home. Now, even with the routine surveillance, the activity still occurred, so the family thought, well, let's step up the surveillance a little bit, and the police actually put kind of like a barricade around the house to see if they could catch the people that were doing this. Again, the authorities weren't able to catch anybody doing this activity, but they were able to see random rocks flying through the air and hitting the home. And when they would go to look to see where the object was coming from or who may have thrown it, they couldn't find any traces of people there throwing the rocks. Now, of course, the authorities finally said to the family, we see what your problem is. We can see the rocks being thrown. We can hear the thumps on the wall, but there's no one here to apprehend. There's no one to arrest. We can't find anybody that's doing this to your home. Now, at one point, their daughter Minnie, who was 12 years old, confessed to some of the activity. She said that every now and then she would bang on the walls or throw something up at the ceiling to make a sound to scare her other siblings. But with the police there, they can't account for her doing all of the activity. Like, there's no way that she could have done all of this activity on her own because there were cops outside watching and they didn't see her. Now, it's important to note that Minnie was kind of the focus to this activity. At one point, she actually left the house to stay at her grandparents for a while, and while she was there, a lot of the same activities started to happen in her grandparents' home. They would hear banging and thumping on the walls. Objects that were hung on the walls would fall, and again there were stones being thrown basically out of nowhere that would hit the house. Eventually, Minnie moved back into her family home, and the activity slowly started to decrease over time. Once Minnie grew up and got older, she got married, and then she stopped talking to reporters about the incident. And to this day, it's still unexplained what was happening to that family. Now, if you remember my video about poltergeist activity, you'll see why this fits perfectly under the category of poltergeist activity. It was focused around one person, a living person. It suddenly started and stopped, and there's no reports of activity occurring in the house before or after this event. So it's definitely a curious case, and it's one that I really do think is poltergeist activity. I think Minnie was the cause of this activity, and she just didn't know it. The activity, it started and stopped abruptly in her home, and it was focused around her. And when she moved to her grandparents' house for that short period of time, the activity followed her there. So I definitely think it was Minnie that was responsible for the activity, and she just didn't know it. What do you guys think was the cause of this activity? Do you think it was Minnie? Do you think it was poltergeist activity caused by her? Do you think it was a ghost in her house? Or do you think maybe she somehow was the culprit under all of this? Maybe it was a hoax, and this little girl just pulled it off perfectly. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you're new, make sure to hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.